You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of being fully seen and what it would mean if it actually worked. My name is Crystal Hoven. I'm an identity coach, and I help people stop abandoning themselves in life and in love. So I help them to stop overthinking, stop performing, stop pretending to be something that they're not, and help them truly come home and back to themselves so that they can live a life fully expressed and completely unfiltered. So I want to talk today about this idea of the lies that we tell ourselves. And let me tell you something, those lies that we tell ourselves can be sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. It's something that I've been able to recognize in my own life, where I've been able to notice that when I'm afraid to start something, or I'm afraid to face something, or I'm afraid to deal with something, right? Or I'm afraid to feel something, even sometimes, I will tell myself that maybe it's this other thing and I'll focus on that, overly focus on that piece, right? Which I see that a lot with clients where there's maybe this big fear that they're having or this big overwhelming emotion that they're having about something. And instead of resolving that or facing that head on, they'll turn towards something else and put all their energy and time into trying to control that or deal with that or face that instead of actually facing what's happening. I actually just had a client conversation about this recently, which is interesting. But what I find really interesting is that all of these little ways that we lie to ourselves are ways that we try to tell ourselves that we need to do this thing first before we can do something else. It's kind of the way that I'm recognizing it now, but I think it shows up in so many different ways, to be very honest with you. And some of the ways that this can show up is like the idea that whatever you're creating or working on or whatever you want to put out into the world, there's this feeling of, well, I have to get this piece done before I can do it. I have to perfect this piece before I can make it happen, right? And that's a lie. Things don't have to be perfect for them to be executed. And something that I've learned on my own journey is recognizing, and we're talking about ex perfectionist here, um, is that it's never going to be perfect, especially the first time you put something out. When you're first trying something new or you're putting something out for the first time, there is never going to be this perfect thing that you're putting out. You can put out something that looks well enough, that works enough, right? But perfection comes from routine, it comes from consistency, it comes from showing up, it comes from learning as you go. There's no way for you to create something perfect the first time you put it out. You'll get better and better the more that you put things out and the more that you learn and the more that you kind of have that experience. And I don't remember who said it, but it was this famous entrepreneur that I saw that talked about how, don't worry about getting it all right. Don't worry about it being perfect. Just choose to show up and put it out there and just start. And it always reminds me of the Nike quote that's like, just do it, right? Just put it out there, just start. It will get better as you go. You will become better as you go. It will become more comfortable as you practice. And as you do it more, it will become an identity, right? To shift identities is to recognize that you have to consistently choose to do that thing over and over and over again. And as you get better, then it becomes who you are. And I just think it's so important to recognize that so many of us want that 100 right when we put it out there, want that best thing right when it's out there. Many different people who have become very famous and have put their art out there, it has not gotten recognized until the 80th piece, until the fifth book, until, right? And this idea that we need it to be perfect right when it comes out is just not realistic or real. It's a lie. It's a lie that we tell ourselves. And then what ends up happening, right? So when we do put that thing out or we do put ourselves out there like that, and let's say it doesn't get the response that we actually want it to, a lot of that time that deflates us to the point where we don't even try again. We don't even put another effort in. Well, we already had that experience, so why bother, right? Instead of recognizing that that's something that you get better with practice. And it's so important to recognize that, what it is that you're putting out there, if it's your first one, the next one's going to be even better. And the next one, even better. And the next one, even better after that. I mean, can you even imagine how great 20 or 30 takes is going to look at the same thing? That's how you get better. That's how you build confidence. That's how you grow. That's how you heal. That's how you build self trust. And I think we just in the society have this belief or this way of thinking that, there are people that have done it the first time and it was great. Sure, maybe there have been, but that doesn't mean that it was the first time they actually created this thing. It's the first time that maybe they put it out there for everybody to see. There's so many things behind the scenes that you just don't see when it comes to someone's creation or when it comes to someone putting themselves out there. And I think that our brain just doesn't recognize that there's so much happening behind the scenes and so much that happened to prepare somebody to get to this point. And so, one of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves, right, is that when I start something, I have to be great at it. And if I'm not great at it, then it's not meant for me. And the fact of the matter is that you get to decide if it's meant for you or if it's not meant for you. But if you're going to make the decision on if it's meant for you based off of what other people think about it, rather than how you feel about putting it out there, then are you really choosing the right thing to make that choice from? When it comes to the lies that we tell ourselves, it's really interesting to me because I think they are so out of our awareness a lot of the time. When I'm working with clients as a coach, I see it so much where clients really just don't recognize the lies that they're telling themselves. Not until we sit there and ask them questions and get super deep into it, like, why are you focused on this when there's no evidence of this being true? Right. And then they're like, oh, I'm avoiding this. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Why? Right? But without the ability to slow down, without the ability to take time, you're not going to recognize the little ways that you are holding yourself back. And I know that I've done this in different ways too. You know, when it breaks down into how putting this podcast out, I told myself every fucking lie in the book. Okay. I told myself that it was going to be more work than doing what I'm already doing. And I didn't have time or space to do more work. I told myself that I couldn't do it without a co producer or somebody working with me or a partner, right? And communicating with someone else. That I wouldn't be able to think of all the things to talk about and to communicate about. And I told myself that I wasn't ready for that it was too much. I told myself that I had to follow a certain timeline that I just didn't want to follow because I'm a rebel, right? I told myself all of these different things before I actually put this podcast out. And one day I was sitting with myself and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my ego. This is me trying to protect myself from the fact that it may not go well, from the fact that this is something that I want to do because it keeps coming up for me, right? And I keep bringing up lies and excuses on why it's not the right time, or I'm not made for it, or I can't do it, or whatever, right? But the reality is that it kept coming back. I kept doing circles, and each time I would tell it a different excuse. I would tell it a different reason why it wasn't time. And I think after like the fourth time, it recycled and came back, and I started thinking about it again. I was like, what is this really about? Because every single time it comes up, I tell myself a lie. I tell myself an excuse on why I can't do this thing, which has never been true, right? Where's the evidence that I can't do something that I put my mind to? There is no evidence of it because every time I've put my mind to something, then I've always overcome it. And I think that that's how you know when it's a lie, right? When you're telling yourself something over and over again and you realize that there is actually no evidence to what you're telling yourself. right? So this idea that I, wasn't going to be able to do it, that was a lie because there's no evidence of that in my life. Everything that I've put my mind to or wanted to do, I've done, right? And so I think that's how you kind of challenge and recognize when you are creating those lies for yourself or lying to yourself, right? I lied to myself for months. On a real note, months. And I got away with it for months before I realized what I was doing. And I think what I've seen as a coach is that people lie to themselves for very long periods of time and are not always aware of it until someone else brings it to their attention, right? And actually, with this specific thing that I'm talking about today, it was someone else who challenged me in that space and made me have to look at myself. And that is what is so important about having somebody outside of ourselves who can kind of like look in from an outside perspective that's not emotionally attached and help us see what we cannot. And what's really funny is that it was another coach that actually challenged me in this space and made me see what I was refusing or didn't want to see, right? I probably could have cycled in that lie for a long time, probably more than a couple of months if I chose to. I was doing pretty good at that point. That's the truth. And so I just think it's so interesting because when we have that outside perspective, we have that person that's looking in that's not emotionally connected. They can help us to see what we cannot. They can also give us a point of view that we don't already have, right? And that we can choose to take on or not. But the other thing about having that outside person who is kind of helping us to see our patterns and shift things for ourselves and recognize maybe the ways that we are not being completely honest with ourselves is that when they worked with us long enough, which I've noticed with clients, is that they remember the little pieces of us that we forget in those moments of doubt. They remember those parts of us that have never failed at anything, that have always gotten stuff done, right? So this idea that you wouldn't be able to is not, there's no evidence of that. And so when you've worked with someone for a period of time and you work with someone that knows you, right? They can help you see how your lie doesn't even make sense to what you know about yourself, but maybe it's something that you've forgotten. Because in those times of doubt, we often have a tunnel vision, is kind of what I call it, where we can't see the other pieces. We only see ourselves from one perspective or one piece of ourselves. We can't see all of the pieces. And this is why coaching works. This is why going to somebody to get help works, because they can see the whole individual. When we are in doubt or we are in overthinking or we are in survival, we only recognize part of ourselves and see part of ourselves. And that's why having an extra set of eyes and talking to someone about these things really makes a difference and helps. And I wonder to myself, how long would I have went along with that lie about, the idea that I couldn't do it and that it was going to be oh so much work and everything, right? I talked this all out with this coach, and he challenged every piece. And how long would I have actually believed that lie or let myself believe that lie? I wonder. I guess I'll never know at this point in time, right? But I do know as a human that there's definitely things I've lied to myself about for a very long time. Becoming a coach was something I didn't do when I first had the feeling or the notion to do it. I waited a couple years. So, I mean, that could have been something that I waited a couple years to do, right? I don't know. But when we are able to genuinely look at ourselves in a safe environment, because that was the other thing that this person created for me, is they created safety. They created comfort. They shared the ways that they were fearful of being seen and how that was affecting their business, which made it feel safe for me to share that as well. And I think that that is so important, that when you are equally sharing within that space, that you can feel when someone else is vulnerable with you, right? You can feel it, you know it. And when that's happening, there's a part of you that feels more comfortable and more safe to show up more honestly and look at yourself more honestly. And I think what was even better with that situation is that he role modeled looking at himself in the ways that he was afraid to be seen in his business. And he didn't shame himself or guilt himself. He remained curious with himself in that space with me, which made it safe for me to also do that. And I think that that was actually a big part of how I was able to actually recognize this and be honest about this and open up about this. And so all of those pieces are so important, right? The safety, the being able to be vulnerable, the role modeling behavior that someone shows you how to do it or how to feel comfortable doing it. And it's okay to do it. And you don't have to shame yourself or guilt yourself, right? And then the fact that I was able to just show up as myself and be curious without judgment, right? It helped me to face myself in a different way. And what's really interesting too is that I didn't know this coach for a long period of time. This was someone that I was newly talking to. And so, if it's the right person, if it's the right energy, if it's the right space, I truly believe that miracles can happen in those spaces, right? If you feel truly safe. And it just kind of opened my eyes to how important that relationship is, which I've always known, but I don't know that I've ever had the experience where I directly experienced it in that way. All of this to say that the lies that we tell ourselves, we'll believe them for years and years and years. Some people will believe them for decades. Some people don't slow down enough to recognize those things or sit with those things or understand those things or be curious about them, right? Because as soon as you feel shame about them, you start to shove them again. I know that life. Been there, done that. But it can feel so much safer and easier to face those parts of us and truly shift who we are and change who we are when we are being witnessed in a safe, non judgmental environment, because that's where true transformation happens. So, this is exactly what I do with my clients in coaching. And if you are interested or you'd like more information, if you're ready to shift identities and stop filtering yourself and truly stand in who you truly are and feel seen and heard being exactly that, and learn to love yourself there so you stop filtering yourself in relationships and accepting less than what you deserve, you can go to crystalclearmystic.com and find out more information about my coaching.